I'll try and paint a clearer picture. It's a bit hard to understand. Um, like all these continents, underneath here, there's sort of gaps through all here. Do you see that there? These through here where the water sort of is about here. It sort of goes from shallow, this part, to really deep out here. So all these bits in between, this sort of whole bite through there is quite shallow, like it's called a ridge, mid-Atlantic ridge, and then it goes all the way down to here, this ridge, and then it goes to the Southern Ocean. It gets really deep again, and this is just ice on top, down the bottom, so there's probably a bit of land at the bottom, but most of this is just a shelf of ice. So there's all these different ridges. If you understand that we're sitting with New Zealand here on a plate, it goes all the way around. This here is a separate sort of section here which busts it away as well. Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, Australia here is on a plate that, I mean, people probably think this is the way it just was. The land was like this, and gradually the ocean took over the land, and that's all that happened. But with Australia, it's a little bit different. Australia, the rest is all as it is. This was just a channel of a river that gradually grew. It just kept eroding into the ocean. It was a river a long time ago, and the ocean was just down the bottom and the very top. So this used to be from about this line all the way around was all earth, all the way around up to about that very little line at the very top there. Then it sort of goes up a bit further where it's sort of just all up here is water. So this once was like a ring of just earth. But with Australia, it was a little bit different. That's why all these are sort of swirly, sort of. They look a bit strange because about, I think, just over Ethiopia and about here, middle of Australia was like this. If you grab this and turn it around like that, up like that, it was jammed up in there. So this part here, Tasmania, was right up in there, and this part here was right up in sort of here. This is sort of eroded, but this sort of went like that, Australia, like that kind of. It's sort of this bit of a shelf here. But since this part here busted off and sort of spun off, but yeah, it's kind of weird how it happens, like, how do I sort of explain it? Explain 10,000 years of change. You've got all these other little ridges and stuff, which are quite deep. And Australia's plate, these aren't on plates, these aren't on plates. This is just on, Africa is very stable. They don't really have earthquakes, South America have a few, America has a few earthquakes, China has a few, but Africa was like really still on the actual earth crust. So Africa is more stuck right on the base of the earth. These other ones have moved. Oh shit. That's not a touch screen. I leant on my board. Hang on. So it's a bit hard to explain, but Australia's a bit not as deep. Like, it doesn't connect as deeply as, say, Africa does to the actual earth. It sort of floated a long time till it came to rest, and then just it was a lot bigger to Australia. It's sort of shrunk. Tasmania was connected, New Zealand was connected. It was a bit bigger, So it's sort of this bit here, whereas this bit here, New Zealand, and this part here sort of fitted into this gap here, and then this little part here sort of hung over the side up to there, so it sort of went like that. New Zealand, Melbourne and Tassie were right up in this little bit here next to India and Saudi Arabia, and that's That was where Jesus was originally crucified 10,000 years ago, right in this little spot here, right over the Arabian Sea. It was this here, where Melbourne is. It was called I had it in my head just before, I've forgotten it. Sea. Oh, what if I can zoom? Wonder if there's a. Wonder if it's written here. Sea of. Oh, what's it called? Not the Dead Sea or Red Sea. There's another sea there. I'll have to think of it later. But anyway, so that's where Australia used to be with New Zealand, in this little gap here, and then sort of coming around in that little gap there, then coming around the corner here, and it's sort of the plate as this hit, the plate cracked underneath and sheared off the whole of that top bit. The water got under it and sort of pushed it over till it got off here, sunk a bit onto this bit. This had sort of a plate as well, just sort of slid down and come to rest at the edge of it. So the plate goes, you know, we're sitting on a plate. It's like a plate on top of a plate. It was sort of just come. We've bonded with it now after, you know, coral's grown and all the shit underneath. We're resting on the proper thing, but we sort of sheared off this part. That's why this is quite shallow in there. So and same with here. This was all pretty. That's sheared off as well. This sort of was a river, and then that's grown out. Whereas this over here is quite deep water. Even over here is quite deep, even though there's a few islands. But yeah, that's what I remember of what happened. There was a meteor strike here somewhere. And correct me if I'm wrong, I've never been to Ethiopia in this lifetime, so I can't tell you if there's anything still there, or whether it could be the cause of why they had so much famine. It might have been the contaminated rocks or something, but might have killed a lot of the actual grasses and things, and they just haven't revived very well. The same with the Australian outback in the middle of there. Like, there's no real reason why that has to be so hot and desolate. I think it's just the rock there poisons the earth. It's all red. It all like hit right on top of Australia and the side there and sheared off like that. Just the shock of it. And then, you know, eventually that sort of sunk in there. So that's all connected. It sort of looks like where that white part is where the plate sort of is like that, and then it's just sort of slid out. This part here sort of moved a bit with it too and just scattered, and yeah, some of that just part of it's erosion and all that. But yeah, originally that would have been earth that's sort of subsided, but yeah, so that's that story. Hope it's a bit clearer, and if you don't believe me, that's fine, it doesn't matter, but it's just the way I remember that whole story back then. And it stayed in Egypt, that story, and it stayed in these areas here, and I think something happened where later on, sort of the birth of all this sort of God talk through here, and later on Moses appeared and said God appeared as a burning bush, and then Jesus appeared and said I'm the Son of God, and then he got crucified in the same way, you know, as what I did back here when I was killed for whatever. I don't want to tell the story, but I'd tell it to Mel Gibson if he'd listen. I'd show him what happened then as well. I remember both crucifixion periods, when the world went through that sort of period of doing crucifixions. It sort of went through spurts, you know. It was just outlawed after a while, and I don't know if they still do them, but they might do them for fun. I don't know, I shouldn't say that, but yeah, so that's what I remember of it. So really, I'm in the same spot there as I was back here. I wasn't in the same place, really. It wasn't that far. You've got, you know, all the Middle East just up here, and you see that area just here. So it's not really, it was all the Middle East there as well. So it wasn't called the Middle East, it was called, had another name back then. I won't change all the names and things, people would get upset. But Egypt was Egypt, Africa was Africa, and then that was all just Africa, and that was Egypt here. I think Saudi Arabia, all this was Egypt, really. And then we were sort of Atlantis, so it sort of come down like that. So, yeah, put that in your pipe and smoke it and see what answers you come up with from the spirit world. And just see if anything answers. Ooh.